Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic questioned American Federation of Teachers President Randi Weingartner. Here's what she said about the school closures.
We tried to do whatever we could. We released this report in April 2020, a common-sense, science-backed plan to open schools safely.
Did the AFT push for a trigger to open schools rather than the clear push to have a trigger to close schools?
Yes, I did, sir.
I could not find anything where teachers, or the AFT, at least in particular, through these communications with the CDC, and that's what we're talking about today, the communications with the CDC, not the Cuomo report.
So, sir, you asked me the question.
I'm not asking you a question right now. I didn't see anything in that talked about opening. It was only metrics for closure.
Chairman of the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, Ohio Congressman Brad Wenstrup joins me. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So that I understand the side of the scenario is that you have the CDC reaching out initially to Randi Weingartner, who's the head of this union. Did they ever reach out to parents to find out what they thought about closing schools or not closing schools?
Well, there were several organizations that they did reach out to. They were mostly non-government agencies. They weren't reaching out to like parents directly, PTAs or anything like that. The whole idea was to try and understand today what the AFT's role was, the American Federation of Teachers. What was their role in all of this, and why did they have so much influence on the CDC through this process? You know, the American Federation of Teachers, well, they should be an organization that's a service organization that should be about providing for the education of our children. Just like doctors provide for the health of the American people, teachers should be out there providing for our children and their future. And that requires schools to be open. That was an essential thing. You know, remember going back not too long ago with something essential or non-essential? Everyone agrees that kids being in school was essential. And the narrative should have been, how do we get kids back in school and teach them? They should have been the last to close and the first back in. But that's not what we saw happen. So we were questioning today about the guidelines that they were able to directly recommend to Dr. Walensky at the CDC. That came out today that the AFT...
Isn't that the fault point? I mean, the CDC is a science medical facility. Yes. So are they reaching out to doctors and medical facilities? They're reaching out to a union. A union is a collection of people to protect their members. So I think the criticism should be of the CDC, because why were they reaching out? Was it for political reasons to a group, a union? Or why? You know, that's where my criticism is. Why is the CDC looking to them for advice?
Well, that's a point that I made today, and Dr. Miller-Meeks made it as well in her commentary. You know, I was saying, look, you have every right to state what you think should be the guidelines or have some kind of input on behalf of the teachers, but the CDC should not be political. They should be completely apolitical, and we see that they're not, because they took some of the guidelines from the American Federation of Teachers, a non-medical entity, and put it right into the guidelines, and that needs to be explained. Where was the data? What was that based on? Because at the time when this was going on, the data was coming in that the kids were safe. Schools were reopening. You know, my kids, one of them was in kindergarten.
Well, why would they want it closed? What would be the motive? What would be the motive of the union to want it closed? Let me just ask you another question: Is the director of the CDC coming before your committee and explaining why they reached out to a union for that advice, which is not a medical union?
Well, go to the head of the class, Greta. This is a step-by-step process. And so we wanted to clarify what we could from them first, and then we go to the CDC and ask them the questions based on what we were able to learn today and what we were able to learn through the documents that we've been getting back from the various agencies. We did learn a lot. We saw that the American Federation of Teachers were only interested in how they could close the schools. They never had anything in their communications with CDC.
Why did they want to do that?
About how we can open schools.
Why would the union, a collection of teachers, what did you learn? Anything in particular why you think that they wanted to do that? Was it for the safety of the teachers and the students? Or was it because they want to sit home?
Well, Well, that's what they started with, is it was for the safety of the teachers. And so we as a nation put the teachers in the front of the line for the vaccines. They said, we're not going back till we can all get vaccinated. So we moved them up along with those that were older and had comorbidities and everything else. And so we moved them up, and then when they got that, it still wasn't good enough. Then they started talking about wanting the kids to be vaccinated. Well, we knew that they didn't need to be vaccinated. They weren't getting sick. The transmission from child to teacher was virtually nil, and the kids weren't getting sick. So all the data and science was there.
But see, that I mean,
that's
that should
exactly
go back
right.
to the CDC. I mean, and that's what I don't understand is it's like the CDC, that's their job. That's their job to give good science, good health recommendations.
Well, you're exactly right, and that's what I told our team today. Yes, but exactly what I told our team last night and today is we're gathering evidence today because the real questions are going to come when we talk to the CDC.
Well, I hope that the CDC does come to. I love transparency. I think we should get to the bottom and find out what happened, and I hope they don't play politics with you. I hope they show up. Congressman Wenstrup, thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you.